This episode of Out of Spec Reviews is brought to you by Magna. More on that later. Hello and welcome back to another Out of Spec Reviews video, and welcome back to the office because this is a little bit of not a car review, of course. This is talking about our 100,000 mile Tesla Model 3 and everything we've done with it. Genuinely, we have logged everything since day one. I've promised you we're going to go on an in-depth overview of our logging software that we've used and some other things. Not a sponsored video by TeslaFi, but just an amazing service that we have come to love and honestly has totally added to the ownership experience of this car. So why don't we dig into everything we've done with our Tesla Model 3, all of the data TeslaFi shows, and now that we've done some degradation testing and range testing, we can actually compare TeslaFi's data with what we're seeing in the real world. So just loading up the front page of TeslaFi, and actually before we start, I should probably explain what TeslaFi is. You see, Teslas have become extremely popular over the years, and because you get an app on your phone, it means there's data going from the car up to a server and then down to your phone. But because of that, you can actually log into now and new third-party services that can take that data transferring from the car to the cloud and store everything into their own system. And I think it's $5 or $10 a month or something. I don't know. We'll have a little link in the description that you can use our code to put this on your Tesla. And I've done this for all of the Teslas I've owned, all the Teslas my family members have owned, and we've logged everything on every car, and it's just amazing. There's a few of these services out there. I just happen to use TeslaFi because I'm comfortable with it, and it was one of the first, and they keep adding great features and tons of awesome data. So basically, the way this works is anytime the car has cellular connection, TeslaFi is logging, reading, and doing everything. There were some issues with this early on, though, where cars weren't going to sleep and they had phantom drain. That's all pretty much been solved by now. So what I'm going to do is basically click on every screen and every menu in here and let's analyze what's done. I genuinely haven't gone through this yet. My colleague Jordan is driving the car right now, so that's what you can see up here. It says Beak is driving for the last 38 minutes. Looks like he went to the supercharger station, charged it for 15 minutes. He added 25 kilowatt hours to the battery pack, 27 kilowatt hours came through the plug, and of course that's always part of the charging efficiency, which we always see about a 10-ish% loss at high power charging rates. You can see the amps, you can see how much we've saved because of course we have free supercharging on this car. First of all, I had free supercharging for the first 2 years of ownership, which was great because I bought it the last day of September in 2019. And then, referrals from you guys, of course, have just meant we've never had to pay for charging, and we still have hundreds of thousands of miles left to use for free on the supercharger network. I don't know why he didn't charge it at home. He has a charger at home, but I don't really care. If he wants to use the supercharger to come up here to the office, that's fine. Looks like he will be here in not too much time, up to Fort Collins. He's on his way. So anyway, this is kind of the stuff that you can see on a daily basis, which is pretty cool. And then, of course, you can see all of the attempts or all of the data for today's stuff. It's basically slept for 11 hours. It was standby for this time. Here's how much phantom battery drain it lost just by sitting there. Probably it's quite high because he had Sentry mode on. Personally, I don't use Sentry mode very much. I just don't like it for its inefficiency. You can see the miles he's driven today and used and how many kilowatt hours and all that stuff. So pretty nice to be able just to get a good glance at all of your information all the time, and you don't have to write anything down, which is cool. So what do you say we start with everywhere we've gone with this vehicle? So if I go to drives and go to lifetime map, this should show us everywhere we've gone. Now the vehicle itself has about 107,000 miles on it right now. Here's the number, 107,056.67. And it's been used, it's been driven, and not necessarily abused, but we haven't really shown the car too much care. This episode is proudly brought to you by Magna. Magna is a mobility technology company that is super unique because they touch every aspect of almost every car on the market, especially a lot of electric vehicles, and they even can produce vehicles from the ground up. Now, you may remember I shot a series just recently testing some of their new electric vehicle powertrains, so stay tuned for a lot of Magna content to come. We're going to be going in depth with some really interesting topics with these guys, and Out of Spec wants to thank Magna for sponsoring this review and tons of other videos to come right here on Out of Spec. We look forward to working with Magna to define and find out what the future of mobility looks like. And here's the lifetime map of our car. You can see a drive is currently in progress, so what Jordan's doing right now won't show up here, and that's totally fine. But here's everywhere we've had the car. And that's just this one particular Tesla. I actually can show my last one that I had, and I have different logins for the ones before that. So really love this service, and it's actually one of, like, owning a Tesla is pretty cool, and like they work great and they're easy, but all of this extra data and support for the vehicle, because they're so popular and so popular with nerds, probably like you and me, it means we get all this extra cool aftermarket support, if you will, in terms of data logging. And I really, really love all this stuff. So the car's had 4,113 drive cycles. You can see of the 107,000 miles, 105,586 has been logged. And that disparity is because we've driven the car out of cell service for about 1,500 miles, it looks like. And so that adds up. So we have, most of the data plus or minus 0.5% or so. And you can see its watt hour per mile has been roughly 339. The efficiency is 70% off of what the car is rated for by the EPA. Here's how many kilowatt hours we've used, 36 megawatt hours plus or minus, especially if we account for the mileage that wasn't logged. Average temperature of driving, actually pretty chilly. I expected that to be warmer, but I guess we've done a lot of cold weather stuff with it. Here's the total cost, the total fuel savings, and I'll show you all these calculations, how I have them laid out. And the total time driving in it's been 2.5 years now, has been 82 days, 3 hours, and 4 minutes of driving, which is quite a bit. And you can see a lot of supercharging stops. And what all these are not just superchargers. Some of the zaps are level 2s, but then you can see physically the supercharger icons around here. Like, for example, this would have been an overnight charge, would be my guess, or a Chatamo, and this would be a supercharger. And so you can see, we lived in North Carolina for the primary portion of the ownership of this car, so a lot of stuff in North Carolina, going out to the mountains, Charlotte, going down to Florida to see my parents over here, the Miami trips, we've done those a couple times, and I just love being able to see where we've gone. Now, I've had other Teslas all throughout the northeastern region, all throughout here, all through the Midwest area, but just not this particular car. And it would have been cool to hit all of the different spots, but they keep adding so many new superchargers. I thought for a video it'd be really fun to hit all of the superchargers. That would take way too long, and definitely don't have the time for it. I hope someone does it out there, though. That'd be kind of cool. I know this car's been to a lot of different supercharging stations, that's for sure. And of course, we've driven it out to Austin. We've done a lot of Texas stuff, tons of stuff in California. We do the Colorado to LA route quite often. We've done the mountain stuff down here in Colorado, going down to Telluride. We've done back routes all through these roads here south of Moab, hitting different chargers. It's just been an incredible journey being able to see the country through this one car and pushing it to areas with no charging infrastructure, such as coming up here into northern Montana, which has always been interesting. So we've done, this I think was one of the longest stretches right here, was Sioux Falls to Fargo on one charge, loaded fully with the cargo box. And we made it. We had to do 100% to like 2% or 1% arrival, but definitely interesting. You can see spots like this or drives that aren't logged because of no cell phone data, going up to Minot, North Dakota, which was also interesting that this was early days and there weren't many Teslas up in Minot. There were a few, but went up there and all around this way. We came down this way to look. I forget what we were doing off this route. I think we were looking at statues or something like that. It's pretty interesting just, being able to see and recap where the car has been. Anyway, we won't, harp on this too much, but you can see lots of different routes, lots of different parts of the country. And this is just one car. We own other cars. We test a ton of cars. So we do a lot of driving, and increasingly less in this Tesla. And we'll get to that in a little bit. Here's an interesting one that I think is very fascinating to me. And it's not necessarily the most accurate chart because driving styles can change in different areas. But you can definitely see a trend in colder temperatures to less efficiency. Now, we know this about EVs, but this definitely shows that the warmer the temperature, the better the efficiency. And then you can see just really variable results here. And that's just because in 110 to 115 degree temperature range, we had only done 204 miles. We've done 16 miles between 115 and 120 degrees Fahrenheit. And I believe the peak temperature this car saw was 127 degrees Fahrenheit in the middle of Death Valley. But I don't believe we had cell service, so that was not logged. But that was just a wonderful trip. All of that's logged on Out of Spec Motoring, our road trip channel. And so you can see basically here the effects of temperature on efficiency. But again, I caution you to use this data because my driving style varies massively depending on what we're doing, whether it's track work to cruising to city driving. And it's not always aligned with the temperatures. But it definitely shows, like when you get enough data, it averages to the warmer it is, the more efficient your car is. Definitely loves this 65 to 90 degree temperature range. We know that about EVs, and that's pretty normal. Perhaps on some of the new heat pump cars, and also it thinks that the lowest temperature it saw is 0. We've definitely been way below 0 with this thing as well. So it's not all 100% accurate. But definitely the new heat pump cars might show a little bit better efficiency in cold temperature, minor stuff. So that's pretty interesting. Here's a more interesting chart that is a little bit more accurate. You can see the efficiency when it comes to speed. Most of the time, this is our road trip car. So you can see the primary amount of driving is done between 65 and 75 miles an hour is where the bulk of the driving of this car has been done. And you can see the efficiency pretty much drops down the faster you go. And of course, the slower you go, if you're sitting in traffic, you're just burning juice, not moving. So it's basically from 30 to 80. Well, let's just say 30 to 60 is where the bulk of your efficiency is. And then the faster you go, you have obviously decreasing results. Again, driving style changes all the time. This is just really interesting data off of this car that it's all logged, and that TeslaFi was able to come up with this, sort of charts to have us nerd out about, which I think is really kind of cool. Road trips, not sure what this is. Oh, so I guess you could say you could have a start date and an end date and view your road trip stuff. It's pretty much similar to Drive, Search, and Download. You can tag locations. You can share stuff. Odometer Graph, let's take a look at this. I don't know. I haven't gone through TeslaFi in a while. This is the first time I'm clicking through in quite a long period of time. And I guess that's, exactly what I was saying to you guys. Oh, so this is where you can see over time how many miles have been accumulated. And you can definitely see a lot of miles early on. Big ramp here. 30,000 miles. Then we kind of chilled for a bit. Then another big ramp. Then another. And this is how we use the car, which is in short spurts of very heavy usage, and then it kind of just sits around all the time. And for us to take care of the battery pack, what we've done is what is tire pressure graph? Interesting. So this is where you can see what your tire pressures were. That one doesn't look so good. 24.3. Must have had a flat tire. It's had a few. This is really interesting. So you can see temperature differences and your tire pressure throughout the last month or some period of time, I guess. And you can even download this into a chart. I mean, it's really great to see all the data they've put in this thing. Let's go into charge summary because this is interesting. So you can see these are all the places that we have charged this car. And so we have taken 18 megawatt hours from the wall, which has resulted in 17.1 megawatt hours going into the battery pack. There's always losses when it comes to charging. And, that's just for AC charging. This is just, level 2, level 1, and you can see all the places that we've charged, primarily at home here in Fort Collins, and then our house in North Carolina, then the track. Then we lived for a short period of time closer to the track, and before we moved out here, we would visit Alyssa's parents quite often. And so basically you can just see all of the different places that we've charged. And then you can see the superchargers this car has been to, all of them. There's 29 pages of them. We should take a look at how many superchargers the car has actually been to. But it's been, it says 288 different supercharging locations, 634 different supercharging sessions. And the Rocky Mount, North Carolina one, which is actually not a great supercharger, it's like a version 2 that's capped at 125 kilowatts, was our most popular. And that's because it was always in between Raleigh and the track. And I would do that commute quite often in North Carolina. And yeah, if we were like shooting a video or doing a track thing, I'd always want the car topped up, and it was the closest supercharger. So did a lot of deep charges at that supercharger, wasted a lot of time there. You can see it's also been charged at 24 different Chatamo locations 32 times. I don't use it very often, but I'm surprised it's that high. And this is actually, if you guys remember from the flat tire video I referenced earlier, this is where we couldn't get that unit to work. We tried 3 times and we got 0 kilowatt hours. So there you go. You can see we've added about 600 kilowatt hours into the battery pack, which is pretty sweet. And then overall, we should get our totals. So our total AC charging, again, added to the battery pack, we'll ignore losses right now, 17 megawatt hours, 21 megawatt hours of DC charging, and definitely the bulk, this bit right here is just AC charging, and the rest here is DC charging. So the bulk of this charging, about 55% of it, has been high speed, high power DC fast charging. And so the general consensus is that DC fast charging will degrade your battery pack a little bit faster, and that's because the cells are getting hotter and hotter. And specifically, DC fast charging at very high states of charge seems to not be great. But in actuality, like this car has been DC charged a ton from 0 to 50%. It doesn't actually seem to have a huge, massive effect on longevity. These things just seem to withstand the abuse of time. And so I'm really impressed by that. And here's all the different charging locations with sort of a heat map. Again, a lot of it in North Carolina, a lot of it in Colorado, the 2 places where we spend the primary amount of our time, even still today. And so that adds up. Let's see what else we have. We have our battery report. Now, when we did our video recently, we did a test of battery degradation. And what comes into that is understanding how we used the vehicle. And again, this shows short spurts, high usage, and then just general driving around. Now you can see the car is set to charge to 70% right now. Typically, I actually, because the car sits, at least now for the last year or so, we've really just had way too many cars around, and I personally haven't been driving it very much. We pull it out, throw the dogs in it, bring them across town, something like that. We usually only charge the car to 50%, not very high. And then, that's just to keep the battery happy in the middle. What that leads to, though, is the BMS potentially getting swayed from understanding what's in the battery pack. And so that's why it's always important to not always rely on what your car says for battery degradation. Like when you go on Facebook and you see these people like, what's your full charge range? It genuinely means not much. Like, don't do that. That just shows you don't understand this stuff. And I'm not saying I understand it fully, but it's like, come on, that's really basic. The best way, and really the only true way to test battery capacity, is to full charge the car with the cells pretty warm, drive it all the way until it doesn't move anymore, and look at how many kilowatt hours you were able to pull out of the battery pack. And so that's exactly what we did, and you can watch that video for all of the results. But basically, we found about a 10 or 11% loss. And you can see here, if we look at our starting range, Tesla uses range as sort of a standard calculation of efficiency, sort of its EPA rated range or rated consumption level. Versus today, you can see the car's lost about 33 and a half miles of total range based off of those EPA watt hour per mile numbers or efficiency numbers, and it's about a 10 or 11% loss. But just to caution you, you can see at the peak, the car thought it had lost 16.7%. basically from the highest it thought and from the lowest it had. And these things sway and come in out and out. And 16% versus 10% is a massive sway. So you really need to perform the test manually. And definitely after performing the test manually, that also shows the BMS in the car, what's available, and it makes the numbers that TeslaFi is giving us even more accurate, because we showed the car full and we showed the car bottom. We let it think about life for a little bit at both, so it got a good accurate reading with sort of the car shut down, and then it was good. And so that's why Tesla especially recommends charging to 90% every day, because then it gets a really good accurate balance. I personally don't do that. It probably doesn't really affect the car that much. I would say for daily usage, if I was driving the car every day, I'd probably charge it to 80%. But like 90, we're talking minuscule stuff. Do whatever you want with your car, of course. But I just have a thing in me that doesn't like to leave EVs very high state of charge. I always, our smart car doesn't have a charging limit, for example. I can't stop it from full charging, and it charges so quick on level 2 that I usually charge it full here at the office, and then I'll drive it home and won't plug it in. I'll just leave it at 80, 90% state of charge, not much more than that. And then you can see all the different logs and readings that it has for this data. So we have a whole video on the degradation on this channel. You can go and watch that, and it's linked in the playlist that this is here. So basically, cars lost about 10% state of charge in 106,000 miles when we did that test. And that's way better than I think anyone was expecting, considering the use of this car. DC fast charging, getting the battery hot on track very often. But then again, time also plays a role in sort of degradation, and most of the degradation happens from time early on, and then it curves down. But this car was treated pretty easily when it's not being driven hard, right? I leave it at 50%. So it's had, the most gentle care and the most extreme use case out of it. One thing I really like to see is this monthly usage calendar. So you can see so far in April, the car's been driven 31 miles. Let's just go to the month before for a full picture. So you can see in the month of March 2022, we drove it 1,000 miles. And here's all the data from that. You can look at each day. You can break it down. This is really useful for so many things. I mean, I'm just a data nerd. I like to see what's going on. You can see, I don't know what we were doing around here, but the car was driven, quite significantly each day. Things like that. Perhaps we can see, maybe this is when we did the degradation test, perhaps. Probably not. I'm not totally sure. That might be this day here. I really don't remember. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But it's very interesting that you can see all of these items, these things broken down. And again, this is not an ad for TeslaFi. You use whatever service you want. We reached out to TeslaFi in full transparency, like, hey, do you want to sponsor this video? Because we're about to go full highlight on your stuff. And they said, nope, not interested in paying to sponsor. So, okay, that's fine. They're still getting the video, obviously, so maybe it works for them. But I definitely like to partner with companies, basically, so we're not just like, here's the best shaving gel, even though we have to do that from time to time. I like to find companies that are useful to our audience, to you guys, to sort of keep us running, which is always great. You can also run live controls to the vehicle, so I'm not exactly sure what we can do here. Yeah, so we can honk the horn while Jordan's going. You can flash the lights. Everything you can do from the app, you can pretty much do. I like this setting the charge level, because in the Tesla app, sometimes you can't get it exact, and here I can set it to the exact level that I want to get it to, which I really like. And then there's so many, I don't know how in depth we really should get here, but for example, let's just go to software tracker. There is a cool feature that TeslaFi can do. I'll show you this here in a second too. So you can see all of the latest updates that are rolling out to the cars, what's available for our car, and sort of the rollout. There's so many cars, I don't know how many they have in their system, and you can choose to have your car display to the wider fleet. We do. I say, yeah, use my data, do whatever you want. They're not using my individual drive data, but they're taking my software versions, all this stuff, and go there. And you can even get an alert when the first car gets the next software update, so you can run out to yours and update it right away. I used to be a lot more into that than I am now, but definitely an interesting thing. Then you can go over here and see which cars connected to TeslaFi are supercharging right now. And I always thought this was the best. So you can see what people are plugging in with generally. And, this guy gets it, plugging in at 2%. Although, why are you doing such a high charge? Because now he's at 91%. But that's a deep cycle, 7%. This guy in Texas plugged in at 0. Nice. And if anything, this is just a great way to understand how people are using their EVs. You know, we hear all the time when we do our 0 to 100% DC fast charging curves that, hey, no one ever plugs in below 10%. Well, we have multiple cases right now in real time. We have a 9%, we have 2 more 9%, we have a 2%, we have a 10, an 8. What else do we have? A 7 and a 0 just from the cars that are connected to TeslaFi. And, you know, these are real hardcore data points that show me, hey, we need to show the full charging curve of the car because people are actually using them. And I think a lot of people are reviewing EVs, doing this 10 to 80 as this industry standard. And I'm going so far away from that. I do not think that's the right way to do a charging curve test. You need to show the full pack. Rant over. Yeah, so here we go. You can see a change log. This is interesting. Let's see what this is. This might be a TeslaFi. Oh yeah, improvements and things that have happened that they've done, which is really great. So, there's James, I think is the guy who runs TeslaFi. Awesome guy. Been working with him since early days and, really enjoyed basically learning how he's adapted the site to improve. And I'm just a fan of the site generally. I think it's awesome. Let's see this. Here are all the software updates that we've had and all of the times and dates as to what's going on. So this is really interesting. So I've had 51 software updates in my ownership period of the Tesla, an average of 17 days that it's been updated. But it has been 34 days since our last update, but I know the car's asking for one. And I know the car's asking for one because when I went here earlier, it said it's waiting to download this thing, and Jordan just hasn't updated it. I don't know why, but he just hasn't. Where did I see it? Somewhere on this page. Oh yeah, 2022.8.2 is waiting for Wi-Fi to download. I guess he just didn't hook it up to the house to download. But we have premium connectivity, so I thought maybe it would go over AT&T. I'm not sure. Anyway, that's everything we've done with the Tesla. We've driven it all across the country. We've logged everything that we have done with this car, every charging session, every drive, except for the ones that were out of cell service, of course. And I hope this has been somewhat interesting to you. I hope that more companies like TeslaFi are starting to make these data trackers for other electric cars as they're becoming more and more popular. Because keep in mind, even just 5 years ago, you could never even consider buying a CCS vehicle to get around as your only car, for road trips and stuff. It was Tesla or nothing. And now we're starting to see more and more CCS cars and more CCS chargers, and that whole reliability conversation and all that stuff separate. But you can pretty much own a CCS vehicle now. You don't need a Tesla just to get around. So we're starting to see more people buy them, and a lot more people. And I've never seen anything like this for any other car company. I'm hoping that we'll see enthusiasts from the likes of Rivian and Lucid, where there's going to be, sort of this vertically integrated system similar to Tesla, start to use some of this stuff. I'd love to see it in the Ioniq and EV6 and GV60, the eGMP cars. Anyway, I'm just a huge fan of the data. I'm really pleased with this service. I'm pleased with how the car has held up wonderfully over our 107,000 miles. And Jordan has been detailing it, and he says it looks brand new now. So that'll be another video, him washing the car and bringing it back to life. But I just thought this was a fun Sunday afternoon video to bring to you guys, go through everything on TeslaFi. Was there anything that we didn't do? Let's see. I just want to show you a couple things. In terms of the data inside of home charging, so you can set, there's our old house. Yeah, I should probably update this. This is a long time ago when we lived in Raleigh, when we first got the car. So you can see, you can set your cost per kilowatt hour. It's pretty much the same now. And yeah, it's all pretty good. It all is pretty amazing for sure. Love this stuff. If there's any particular data you'd like to see, maybe I'll make a follow-up video to this, or we'll do it on our Out of Spec podcast. So leave some questions down in the description below. We are going to be filming with this car this week, bringing it back in, finishing up the 100,000 mile update, because now it's really a 107,000 mile update. And I really appreciate you all watching and subscribing to Out of Spec Reviews. Have a great one. Bye-bye.